So one of the things I wanted to talk about, or most of the things I want to talk about today, is portable oxygen concentrators. So how many people in here are in home care? DME home care? Oh, good, a lot. So you guys are going to be able to relate to this a lot. And then if you're working in skilled nursing facilities, SNFs, hospitals, okay, so we got a wide variety. But I think this is important information for everyone to know in all healthcare facets, because portable oxygen concentrators has really grown over the years. I've been in the field a long time, and we did not have portable oxygen concentrators when we started. In fact, concentrators were like bigger than this podium. Wooden, does anybody remember those? They looked like a coffee table. Yeah, I hate to admit that, but they were big. And now we're down to ones that can be 3 pounds. Like, that's amazing. But what we don't understand a lot of times are what are the drawbacks of those small portables, because we know every patient wants something that's less than a pound, will last 3 weeks, and they never have to charge it. That's what we want. That's what they want. So this lecture is really to give you an understanding. Oh wait, I gotta get my little clicker here, sorry. Maybe. Okay, well, I'll just use the arrow. It's good. There's always technical difficulties when I get up here. So really, let me see which one's up. I'm so used to, okay. All right, so the objectives today is really look at the variables that are around the delivery of oxygen through these portable oxygen concentrators, and really understand what the limitations these devices have. But really, I want you to understand what the marketing tactics are from a marketing aspect, and it's not to a clinical point of view. It's more about the aesthetics of the devices and how they work. So we want to go through that. I found this a really good article that was published, and they looked at French data. And they looked at the growth of oxygen equipment and just respiratory equipment over a period between 2006 and 2009. But what was interesting is they found an 88% increase in prescribing of oxygen. So this was French data, French National Data System. But what they found is, and this is no surprise, 13% decrease in liquid oxygen, no surprise. But there was a 44% increase in oxygen concentrators. But the interesting thing was a 509% increase on POCs over five years. So what does that do to the market? Our manufacturers, which is great, everybody's creating POCs now to meet the demands of these patients. I'm up here to tell you that I'm not supporting one or the other. I have a few of my favorites in mind, and one of the things I want to bring up when I'm talking about these portable concentrators is I could never talk to you about every single one out there. So I'm putting a disclaimer out there now. If you made a slide, but there are so many out there that I would never be able, Colleen would have to give me 3 hours to talk, and you guys would all be sleeping at that point. So for those of you that aren't sure, the way a concentrator works is it pulls into room air. There's two what they call sieve beds. They take out the nitrogen, and then they take out the oxygen from the air, and then the oxygen goes to another sieve bed for the oxygen removal and storage to a tank. Usually it's about 90 to 95% oxygen that's delivered out of that device. So keep that in mind when we start talking about some of these portable concentrators that are advertised online. The idea is 90 to 95% oxygen output is still therapeutic. When you start getting into the 75, 80% range, by the time it gets into the lungs, we're about 21%. So keep that in mind, because this is the stuff that our patients don't understand when they're out surfing the internet to buy concentrators. So a little bit on how they work. Some devices can have continuous flow. Those are usually your bigger ones. So they usually weigh about 15 to 20 pounds. There are some lighter ones out there now, around 10 or 11 mark, that'll give you 2 liters continuous. But the maximum you find is 3. I haven't seen any that are over 3 liters continuous. So the pulse delivery, though, is built into these devices. And the idea is to conserve oxygen. Well, conserve oxygen can be held very loosely. We don't want to conserve too much oxygen, right? Because if we're conserving too much oxygen, then clinically the patient's not getting what they need. They're not meeting their needs. Pulse delivery is based on flow. Some pulses can be delivered very fast. Some can be delivered very slow. The patient has to initiate the breath, so they have to be very sensitive, because if they don't sense a patient's breath, it's not going to deliver the breath. And I can tell you, after testing many of these over the years, there are a lot that miss patients' breaths all the time. And there are some that deliver as soon as that patient initiates the breath, they get the whole bolus. And then the rest of the inspiration, there's no gas exchange occurring. So it doesn't mean one's bad and one's good. It just means we need to monitor our patients on these. And talk about a need for a respiratory therapist at this point. We need to be able to titrate these patients. We don't want them going online and purchasing their portable concentrators. So I always like to say, you know, a 2 is not a 2. Just because they're on 2 liters per minute of oxygen doesn't mean they're going to be fine on a setting of 2 on a POC. Some POCs that we've seen, if they're on 2 liters per minute, they may need 4. It all depends on what the bolus delivery is of that device. None are created equal. So when you look at the different methods of delivery of that bolus, it can be really put into 3 categories. Fixed bolus, which the manufacturer says, picks a number, my device, I guarantee, will deliver 30 mLs at a setting of 2, up to a breath rate of, and they pick a breath rate, 20, 24, is usually. What happens after 24? All bets are off. I can't guarantee anything after 24. And we all know when our patients are up and moving, walking to the mailbox, they could very easily hit higher than 24. And then when you get into our pulmonary fibrosis patients, that's when we really have struggles with these patients, because their oxygenation is usually so poor. The other type is minute volume. So we all know what minute volume is. So these devices can only make so much oxygen in 1 minute. So obviously, if you have a very fast breath rate, your bolus delivery is going to be very small. If you have a very slow rate, it's going to be high. But it can only make so much oxygen in 1 minute. And then we have a lot of the auto-titrating units out there that are based on patient's breath rate. So if breath rates increase, the bolus delivery will increase. Breath rates go down to baseline, the bolus delivery goes down. Some are, if there's movement, you know, that's picked up as a respiratory rate, bolus will go up. When they sit down, bolus will go down, okay? All 3 are fine. We just have to understand how each one of them works. The problem is there's no standards out there for these devices. So every manufacturer is different. So I might be fine. Oh, I forgot that there. That's there. See, this is why I can't walk either, because my arms are flying. And for every device out there, it's variable. So I could give you right here, how many devices are there? I keep looking here thinking I see the screen. But there are 7 devices here, and every single one of them has delivered something different. And this is older data. It was done by Valley Inspired Gas. Bob McCoy, if anybody knows Bob McCoy, he falls into the older category of us. Right in my category, basically. But he used to do a lot of testing on these devices, and he was your expert in understanding conserving devices. So he did a lot of bench testing to show this data. And, you know, really, right there, they all show something different. Here was 7 of these devices he tested at 15 breaths per minute and 30 breaths per minute. And you can see here that in the blue, that's 15 breaths per minute. Every single one of those devices is different. If you look at the 30 breaths per minute, which is in the orange, every one of them went down. Okay, so, and every one of them are different. So it just varies on the device, which I'm probably going to say this 10 times today, and this is where my spout out is for respiratory therapists. We have to be able to titrate these patients. And one doesn't fit all. So if you're a company that says, I got a good deal on, I'm just going to pick a brand, Inogen, that's the Kleenex brand that we see on the Price is Right all the time and during Lifetime movies and everything else. And then we all know we get 50,000 calls afterwards to see if we carry the Inogen. You know, it's just, we can't keep one device because every patient is different. What's good on one might not be good on another. If I might be good on an Inogen, You might be terrible on an Inogen, okay? So we have to have multiples for that patient to choose from. And those choices really vary. So you're looking at maximum oxygen production. How much oxygen can they produce in a minute? What is the bolus size at each setting? And do I have room to grow? So if my patient's already on the edge of the unit, which most of them go to 4 or 5, some of them go to 9, we'll talk about that. But if you get it to a setting of 4, you have nowhere to go. So if that patient needs additional oxygen or their disease state progresses, we can't go any higher than 4 unless we go into a bigger machine. Has anybody ever tried to take a 5-pound machine off of a patient and tell them they now needed a 20-pound portable concentrator? It doesn't happen. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I had a patient throw the pulse oximeter at my respiratory therapist because he was satting at 71% on his Inogen because his flow rate was increased to 6. But he thought it would be fine on that. And he was not happy at all. So trying to explain to patients this is very difficult sometimes because it does limit their activity when they have to go into a 15-pound device or 10-pound device or whatever it is. The sensitivity, as I spoke a little bit about earlier, is we got to make sure these patients are able to trigger these devices. What's the purity of the gas coming out of them? Most of them is 90 to 95%, but I'm going to show you some that I pulled up on the internet where they're touting that they deliver anywhere from 24 to 90%. Well, how does that work? If you're saying my POC is putting out 24% oxygen, we all know as a respiratory therapist, we're delivering room air to that patient by the time it gets to their lungs. But people and patients are buying these because of the lack of understanding that comes with these units. Flow rate. How many of them have continuous flow? We have patients that want these devices and they want to sleep on them. They want to take them and travel because they weigh 5 pounds. And I'm going to talk about it here in a little bit, but there's really no good studies out there to say you shouldn't sleep on them or you should sleep on them. But we all know that there's a degree of patients with sleep apnea or mild sleep apnea or just hypopneas that maybe their breathing is so shallow when they go to sleep they're not able to trigger the devices. You know, best practice obviously would be to put everybody on a nocturnal pulse ox, and we all know from a home care standard nobody's going to pay for that, and it's going to take a lot of time and energy with that. But it is a concern. The battery life and expense. So these batteries are expensive on these units, and they are only guaranteed anywhere from 6 months to a year. So if you're a company renting it to a patient and your insurance, you're responsible for all that unless you want to add extra batteries and things. But when patients buy these online and they spend this kind of money and then they have to spend another $500, $600, $700 for a battery every year, it becomes very difficult for them. So, you know, coming from the HME side, we want to encourage our patients to go through an HME company. We don't want them to go online to purchase these devices. Number one, they've got a lot of expenses, and they're not looking at the right reasons why they're buying these devices. So here's my disclaimer again. I'm not touting any of these. These are all just various ones that I have been made familiar with over the last several years. The iGo2, and have you guys heard of smart dose technology, where it automatically titrates to the patient's breath rate? They have a conserving device. It's built into their portable concentrator. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I'm just going to point out some features that exist on them, but it is the most sensitive out there right now that I'm aware of. The Inogens, the Kleenex brand. Everybody knows Inogen. They've done a great marketing campaign. How many have seen the commercials? And I can tell you, every single one of us talk about AI generation. Everyone's going to look at our phone and they're going to POCs the whole way down your news feed on Facebook. And they're everywhere. And it's a lot. Again, we're respiratory therapists. Some of us know a lot about it. Some of us don't know much. But patients really don't know anything. And that's what we need to educate them. So the Inogen Rove 6 or G6, it's pretty much the same thing. They have a high maximum output at 1260. Now, I just looked at a unit from React last week, and they're actually at 1300. So they're a little higher than the Inogen right now. They do have one, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's has 6 on, R6 or something like that. But it is pretty high in output. I've never used them, don't know anything about them other than the rep was in last week. And I said, I didn't know that. I just put on here that the Inogen had the highest, but on his little comparison sheet, it did have a higher bolus. Not by much, but sensitivity is pretty much the same in all of these. Like I said, the iGo2 seems to advertise as the most sensitive. The Inogen does have what they call intelligent delivery technology, where if there's a decrease in respiratory rate, it'll increase the size of the bolus that's delivered, and shallow breathing will trigger some breaths too. So that's a good feature. Inogen G4, people love this one because it's small. It only weighs 2.8 pounds. I want that one, right? It'll fit in my purse. But it only makes 600 mLs of oxygen per minute. So probably if you're on 1 liter per minute continuous, it's probably okay for you. But when you're getting into the 2 and 3 liters, there's no way that this device is gonna be able to meet your needs, okay? The Independence is a bigger unit on wheels. It weighs about 18 pounds. They tout energy smart technology, so they're touting the longest battery life. This does have a huge output because it weighs 15 to 20 pounds. So whenever they're bigger, they have a bigger storage unit that they can hold the oxygen. And that's kind of what we try to explain to our patients. Think of it this way. If you have a 2-pound unit, and then you have a 5-pound unit, and then you have a 20-pound unit, which one's going to hold more oxygen or make more oxygen? The 20-pound unit. So that's kind of a good way to explain to our patients. And I've used the analogy where if you're on a desert and you need a drink, do you want a cup of water or do you want a gallon of water to last you the day? Obviously, you want the gallon of water. You just don't want to carry it through the desert. But clinically, the bigger unit is better for those patients who have higher needs than the lower need patients. The Independence also has, a lot of these have built-in technology, but most of them, the patients have to go in and register the machine, and then it'll track how often they use it. It'll track some equipment issues, some data like that. The Independence is one that has built-in technology that runs off of cell phone towers and stuff, so that the DME company can really monitor the activity of that unit. So if you use them in the hospital to discharge patients, and guess what? You look at it in a week later, and patient never turned it on. Where's it at? And you can actually see where the unit's at. It sounds like wonderful technology, but the problem is you have to have somebody that can manage it. And but the nice thing about it is it's not patient dependent. It automatically picks up and will show you where the patient's at. It'll show you equipment issues. If the sieve beds are going bad, it'll show you all that. So it is good for that respect, but you really have to have some manpower to man that information and do something with it. The Eclipse is an older unit that's really been rock steady in the production. It is a bigger unit, definitely. It's definitely used for your higher end patients when they're on the 6, 7, 8 liter per minute cusp. It might work. They might be okay on this one. Again, it's a bigger unit. It will automatically adjust the oxygen breath delivery based on the breath rates. It does have pulse and continuous flow, and if there's no breath rates detected, it'll kick in. So it technically goes up to a setting of 9, and it does have a large output for oxygen. So we actually do use this unit for our higher liter flow patients, and we've found luck on getting some of these patients on that because, you know, our limitations with these POCs are really limited, and when you get into your patients with your pulmonary fibrosis, there really isn't any good portable for those patients other than a gas cylinder. Liquid, yes, but unfortunately because of reimbursement, liquid has gone away. So if you want to get involved, the SOAR Act is one of the acts that is out there now for home care and for patient access. What they're asking for is our senators in Congress to really look at certain patients that would need liquid oxygen because there's no other portable device that really will meet their needs. So I highly encourage you, if you go out there and get on the AAR website, really click on that SOAR Act and send it through SOAR Act, S-O-A-R. and send it to everybody in your company or your facility or your hospital and get them to get it to our senator. So, okay. So then this one is the Zen-O. I don't know much about this one. It does have what they call RRT. Isn't that interesting? Responsive therapy, which increases the delivery based on the breath rate again. And then it does have some pulse and continuous flow. It's one of the newer ones out there that are actually in that middle range. Most of the portable concentrators are in that 5 pounds or less range or 15 and greater range. This one falls into that middle category. It used to be Simply Go, which was a 10-pound by Philips. Well, Philips quit making it, so this is kind of moving into that space. I've not used them. But I do feel that might be a nice niche for those patients that really can't handle the 15 and 20-pound units. And then you have a couple more, Freestyle Comfort, O2 Concepts. The Freestyle Concept or Comfort, it also has that auto set technology where it automatically will titrate to the patient's breath rate, will detect if there's no breath rate initiated. And the O2 Concepts, is there anyone in here from O2 Concepts? And I'm not bashing anybody, honest, but this one is, I struggle a little bit with because it does have a 1 to 9 setting, and I find it very hard, and I really don't know much about this, but a setting of 9 doesn't still have a lot of bolus delivery. I looked at this unit a while back. It is a heavier unit because it does have a little bit more capability. But when patients see it goes up to 9, what do you think they say? And a patient's got pulmonary fibrosis and I'm 8 liters per minute. Well, that doesn't mean a setting of 8 or 9 is going to work for you whenever your device is only 10 pounds. Oh, uh-oh. I set my goal. See? Uh-oh. I need a password. I don't know why I did that. Okay, well, I'll just keep going. And then when we get to the slide, I'll just move forward. But see, now I'm all messed up because now I can't remember where I left off. But no, but it is, from what I understand, it is a good device. I just worry about when they say they can get settings of 9 in a small device. That it just concerns me a little bit. So whenever I went out I did a Google search on looking for portable concentrators. And one of the things that come up was the National Council on Aging, and they listed the best concentrators out there. And whenever you look at the best concentrators out there, they really looked at them for the wrong reasons. They rank them, and if my screen ever comes back up, it ranks them, and like you'll see that when they rank them based on size, battery life, battery durability. There was one they put maximum output, and that was the sequel. So they really didn't say anything about bolus delivery, anything like that, which kind of concerns me because if I'm a patient trying to do research on what portable concentrator I want, I'm going to go by aesthetics. I'm going to go by how it fits to my body because some of them tout that this one's curved shape and it fits nice. Some of them are too heavy. So I'm going to look at that stuff if I'm a patient who really doesn't understand. I'm not going to look at my future needs. We all know COPD patients don't get better. We all know pulmonary fibrosis patients don't get better. So we don't want them to buy a unit that's not going to be able to move with them, okay, with their disease state. So that's, am I getting help? Hi, Gary. How are you? I've really never had, I was at a conference one time where they lost power, and the poor girl that was doing the lecture had to do the whole lecture without any slides. And it's like, did you do? Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's asking for his. Oh, jeez. The minute he walks out of the room, it blacks out. Nothing like staring at poor Carrie while she's trying to put this in. I don't know about you guys, but whenever you're typing in front of somebody, oh God, you never know what I'm going to type. Well, anyway, so while she's doing that, okay, while she's doing it, I know a few slides ahead, I'll go ahead and go on to.
Okay, sorry, I'm hurt.
Oh, there he is. You don't have to apologize. So when we look at all these things, what I really want to talk about next is the marketing tactics. Again, we're marketing for the wrong reasons. We're marketing to the consumer and not to the clinical side of the equation. And that's because we're targeting our patients, right? So I'm not blaming any manufacturer. I'm not. I just want patients to understand. Thank you. Now let me see how far I got. Now it doesn't want to move. If I use a mouse pad now, it will. It moved. It won't use the arrows. I don't know. I think it's me. So one of the things I always like to, ask my audience, and I know the answer is, which POC would you choose? Would you choose that 4.5-pound POC? That's a nice little purse, and you get nice bags that match your outfits. Or would you want one that's 10 pounds, you got to lug around on wheels? We all know what we'd want. Truthfully, I think I would like the one that goes on wheels, just because they wheel nice. But the problem is our patients have trouble lifting them in and out of the car because they don't have that upper body strength. So they all want the purse style. But in reality, when you look at these POCs, that POC A, it 840 mLs per minute. So that's what it makes. So if I have a breath rate of 15, I'm going to get about 56 mLs per breath. If I have a breath rate of 25, I'm going to get about 33 mLs. Concentrator B, it makes 2,000 mLs per minute. So obviously, at 15 and 30, I'm going to get much more at that rate. Doesn't mean that either one of these are bad. It just means we need to make sure we're fitting the patient to the right device. Okay, I know this slide's a little busy, but this slide really is trying to depict the 3 different sizes of concentrators that we look at. That 5-pound, that 10-pound range, and the 20-pound range. And what we found within our company, that if patients are on 1 to 3 liters continuous, more than likely they will be fine on one of these small 5-pound POCs. If they hit to the 3 to 5 liter per minute range, now we're looking at the 10-pound unit. If you are in the 5 to 8 liter per minute range, you're looking at the 15 to 20 pound. And 8 is really pushing it. And 8, you might be able to get it into that sequel, which is the largest one out there. But that's the patient population we're struggling with. Because if you're on 8, 9, 10 liters, and we see it all the time, how many people are seeing higher liter flows now? 15, and we don't have any capability for these patients unless you still provide liquid for those patients, which we do, but I know there are a lot of companies that are not able to do liquid anymore. There's nothing for them but gas cylinders. So these are the patients I really worry about when they get online to start looking, because there are devices out there that are advertising of settings of 9 online. But when you look at the fine print, the percentage that's being put out is very low. So this whole concept of POCs has really exploded and really caused the confusion among our healthcare providers, among patients. So the internet tactics are really not, like I said, to the consumer. Marketing tactics are to the consumer and not to the patient, unfortunately. And as you can see by this picture depicting, our consumers are confused. They have no idea what they're ordering. And then, I kind of talked through this a little bit when we didn't have a screen, but they're choosing for the wrong reasons. They're looking at aesthetics, they're looking at the size, they're looking at how long the battery lasts. They're choosing based on their current script. Like I said, we know these patients never get better, and that flow is going to be increased over the years, so the changing disease states. So this is what I was talking about, the National Council on Aging, and this is the things that they put up to consider before purchasing a portable concentrator. Again, current flow and oxygen needs, they did bring up battery life, warranty, size, weight, noise, buying versus renting, cleaning, maintenance. Missing component was that maximum oxygen output and what the percentage of oxygen was being put out at. So that was the missing component. And this was the quick look at the best portable oxygen concentrators in 2024. But again, they only looked at, if you can read down the list, one's most discrete, best battery life, best continuous and pulse flow, which I was glad to see that, most portable, best warranty, most durable, most comfortable to carry. So what do you think the patients look at? You know, they don't understand the output. So we really need to encourage our patients. And I pulled some false advertising, and I'm going to talk about a study that was done and published in Respiratory Care a few months back. But the false advertising, if you ever go out there and look at some of these ads, they have physicians sitting there with a lab coat talking to their patient. And they have a nurse or a respiratory therapist, but they have a healthcare professional sitting there with them talking about it. So it's really false advertising because some of these are medical grade prescription devices that you can buy online, absolutely. But there are many that don't require a prescription. Well, we all know with oxygen, you have to have a prescription. They get away with not needing a prescription because the percentage of the output of oxygen being put out is so low that it doesn't constitute medical grade oxygen. And that's what we have to be careful about. So this one here, and price factor. If you find something that's $219 like this one is, I can bet you my life it is not putting out medical grade oxygen. The devices that you buy online that are prescription only, medical devices will range around, it depends on how big and how the size of them, $1,500 to $3,000, and that's just a ballpark. $219 is not. But look at this one. If I'm a patient and I need oxygen, look, 1 to 7 liters per minute. Well, my home care company told me I'm on 6 liters per minute, so guess what? This would be perfect for me, right? Adjustable percentage, 35 to 90%. So that tells me if I'm on a setting of 6, then I'm getting probably about 40% oxygen maybe. But if I need that 7, I'm probably getting 35% oxygen. So what happens by the time it gets to our bloodstream, it's room air by the time it gets to where it needs to be. So again, if I'm a patient and I'm on 6 liters per minute, that's what my company told me, that's what my doctor told me, this is a perfect option for me and it's in my price range. Did it move? Nope. Okay. This one I found interesting because look, they did it so uniquely that they put a pregnant woman on here needing oxygen. Talk about at our sympathies. Oh, no one would false advertise a device that they'd give to a pregnant woman. So, but if you look at this one, it's the newest 3-liter portable oxygen concentrator machine. It delivers 28% plus or minus 2%. So if you put on a setting of 3, what do you think you're getting? Okay, by the time it gets to your lungs. But the oxygen flow goes to 3, it's portable, and it's not very noisy. And we're giving it to a pregnant woman, so how bad can it be? This was advertised as the health expert. Again, putting that term health in there to make it, oh, this is good. It's health, it's an expert. It's small, it's lightweight, it's easy to purchase. How does it work? How does it clinically work? Now it's a little bit more expensive, $359, but if I'm a patient and I see how little that is, that's going to be one of my options I'm going to put in my cart for later. Okay, so just a few more. You can go on to eBay and buy them. This one I found very interesting. It was a 2 to 9 liter per minute oxygen generator, air concentrator, air purifier. So it does multiple things for you. It's only $329, and if you look closely here, you get flows from 2 to 9 and concentrations from 30 to 90% plus or minus 3%. Okay? So that's a great one. I could be on 9 liters per minute and it will deliver me 30% oxygen. So needless to say, that patient is not getting oxygenated when they're going out and about. And put them in an airplane, what do you think is going to happen? Here was another one, and this one's cheap, $117. It goes to 1 liter. It is an oxygen concentrator, 1 liter per minute air purifier. And it has 55% oxygen plus or minus 3%. So that's why they can get away with selling these units without a prescription, because they're not delivering oxygen, okay? This one you have to hurry and order fast because there's only one left when I did this, so. You can go to Walmart. Now, most of these that I pulled up on Walmart are pretty much your standard units, and you can see they're priced accordingly, and I'm sure it requires a prescription. Again, if it quits working, who's going to provide you with a backup tank or a backup to that? If it quits working, how long is it going to take for them to fix it? You got to figure out a way to ship it back and get it back. Okay, so again, online purchasing is not the answer. You can go to Amazon. Oh, here's a whole bunch on Amazon. I'm not going to get into all these, but Craigslist was my favorite. You ready? You can buy one of ours. Somebody was selling ours. Yeah. Yep, somebody was selling ours. Right there's our tag, Allegheny Health Network, home medical equipment. So, yeah. Yep. How much? It was like $2,800, but we got it back. Our director of customer service is a respiratory therapist, and he's a bulldog, and he's like, I'm getting that back. I'm calling. He called them and ended up meeting them at a local convenience store, and then told them that it was our unit, asked them where they got it. Oh my, and in respect to them, their father died, they thought they owned it. So it does happen. But, they should never be able to sell these devices on Craigslist, on eBay, or any of these places. But unfortunately, that is what happens. So I found this interesting. If you haven't looked at this article, I encourage you to look at it. Dr. Cassaberry, Mike Hess, and others did a bench test, over-the-counter test of portable concentrators. They only had 3, so it was a limited study. But again, the whole background was based on POCs or FDA cleared devices. They're medical grade. Cheaper devices are labeled as POCs, as I just showed you, don't require a prescription, but are advertised online. Less expensive range. So what they did is they created a metabolic simulator, and they simulated breath rates. And they tried to achieve 2 liters per minute, what a continuous flow of 2 liters would mean. So what they used, they had 5 sources. They used a 2 liter per minute continuous flow cylinder. They used a prescription POC that went from 1 to 2 liters continuous. They also looked at a prescription POC that went from 1 to 6 settings, pulse settings. And then they looked at an over-the-counter one that went from 1 to 7 liters per minute, which is what they tagged it as. An over-the-counter 2, which was a single setting of 3. It's probably that one I just showed you. No, I don't know what it is. He didn't tell us what it was. And then an over-the-counter 3, which was settings of 1 to 5 pulse. So the interesting thing was, when they looked at these devices, the O2 over-the-counter 3 set at 4, you could achieve the same result as 2 liters continuous. So you had to increase that POC to 4 to actually get comparison of what 2 liters per minute continuous would be. But the over-the-counter 1 and over-the-counter 2 could never have achieved what 2 liters per minute would have achieved. So it pretty much confirms what we're saying is these devices are advertised inappropriately, and patients don't understand, unfortunately. But it was a really good article to read if you have time to read. I think it was I don't remember, 6, it was within the last year. So the nocturnal use of pulse oxes, I touched on that a little bit when I didn't have my slides, but there are several pulse oxes that have continuous flow up to 3. So those ones can be used for travel, they can be used for bleed-in, for CPAP machines, BiPAP. But when you get into the pulse ones, obviously we can't bleed them into our CPAPs or BiPAPs or trilogies or vents or whatever we're using. But if a patient just has a POC and they want to sleep on it with a pulse mode, there's really no good data out there to support that. I'm not saying, a lot of these will have what they call sleep mode, which means they're a little bit more sensitive, but there's really no data to support it. And I don't know, does anybody in here have any patients that use it at night, well, that you know of, that use it at night on a pulse setting? It's pretty much, it's not a standard of practice, unless we know we have patients do what they want when they're at home, so they may be. But the only studies that I could really find, and this one in 2006 was done by Chatbird and all, and it was a very small, limited study, and it was the company that actually put on the study, so very limited. They said there was no clinical difference. Okay. There was one in 2017 by Chen and all that really compared the devices as well. It was limited. There was only 15 patients in that study. 3 of the 15 did fail to trigger it. So there's not bad odds, but we need more data to support this. So really, you know, what about presence of sleep apnea or anything like that that could change that effect? But we really, you know, the best practice would be to put a nocturnal pulse ox on everybody and let's see what they do. But unfortunately, from a DME perspective, we're under a lot of constraints to do that. What we do need is some studies to show, independent studies from manufacturers. But again, hard to get that time and funding to do that. So I always, you know, question, you know, we talk about readmissions, you know, this is something we've all talked about for many, many years. And you know, oxygen bolus sizes that are not large enough for patients when they exert or walk around, is that getting them readmitted to the hospital? We don't know. You know, there's limitations on that reservoir that we talked about. There's poor synchronization or sensitivity on some of these devices. So these patients desaturate, they've limited activity, they readmit. We don't know. Is it the device or is it an exacerbation from the patient? You know, the key is we want to keep these patients oxygenated. We want to make sure they're doing okay. But if you have somebody who's not, is that what's getting them in the hospital? So, you know, there is an old guideline out there. If anybody feels really rambunctious, we really should help the AERC update this manual, but this is what we got now. This was a manual that was put together several years ago by the AERC, and it's a guide to purchasing POCs. It's good. It's good. I'm sure there's some updated information that needs to put in there, but the biggest advice I can tell you, especially if you're not working in an HME company, is educate your patients. They need to go through the HME provider because insurances will pay for these. They will pay for a POC. They will pay rental. It's not the greatest, and as an HME provider, we don't like what we get reimbursed. We don't like what we get reimbursed on most stuff. But they are reimbursable. So if you have a patient who is considering buying online, make sure that we're telling them that you've got to understand what you're buying. You've got to look at what's going to happen if the unit fails on you, who's going to take care of it, what's the warranty on it, you know, all those things that we talked about before this. You know, as if you go through your HME supplier, they're the ones that you call at 8 o'clock at night when you're stuck at the mall because it quit working, okay? Not that we like those calls, but if they have to send it back to the manufacturer, you're looking at who knows what kind of turnaround they're gonna get. So again, things to consider, we talked about your oxygen requirements. If you're less than or equal to 3, the little one's pretty good. If you're greater than 4, you're going to get into a heavier unit more than likely, even though the unit says settings go to 5 or 6. I can't state enough that I believe wholeheartedly the RTs need to titrate for these patients. They need to go out in the patient's home, titrate to daily activities of daily living to see how they do, because some patients, the endurance is the problem, some patients it's upper body strength, and have them do these different things and see if it maintains their saturations the majority of our time. Now, a lot of patients nowadays have pulse oxes, have the finger pulse ox. It's great sometimes it's not. We all know that. I'm dropping today. Okay, well, you know, are you back up? Yeah, I'm back up. Okay, you're fine, you know, but it's still a good tool for them to have to see if they see any trending in it, even after the RT titrates, obviously because of the changing disease states. We really need to look at travel needs. Obviously, these were built originally for patients to travel, which has been a great advent for our patients, that they can fly and travel on these devices. But we got to make sure that we're taking in the clinical needs of that as well, because we all know when we get in the air, what happens to our saturation. Well, patients that are already compromised, we got to make sure that they're getting the right script and they have the ability to change that in air. You want to look at warranty and repair, obviously. You know, I believe that, you know, if a patient has a POC and it quits working, then we're going to replace it as long as it is in a rental phase or we're in a 5-year period. But if a patient purchases it outright and it doesn't go through the insurance, you know, what kind of cost is that going to be for them to repair that unit? They're not going to get that 5-year plan on that device. So we talked a little bit about air travel requirements. Always check with the airlines. We always get a permission slip from the doctor. Understand what that altitude does on the oxygenation levels. So if they're already at the brink of that POC and they're just barely holding saturations, then you better go to the next size POC. And as you can see, we're so limited on those higher liter flow patients again. So back to that SOAR Act. When we're done, everybody get on there and get that letter sent. Must have a current script from the doctor. Always provides some advance warning to the home care company. And we have to provide enough battery life for the duration, 150% of the battery life in duration of flight. And then we always arrange for an emergency supplier, or we have the patient arrange for emergency supplier. Because these POCs are great, but I would love to put a sticker on them that says, if you drop me, I'm going to explode. Because we all know these patients, they have trouble carrying things anyway, so they're compromised. And sometimes they're just careless, and sometimes they're, you know, just sitting in their home and they're not using them. But you know, we really got to make sure that these devices work for these patients, and we make sure we provide them with our knowledge. So in summary, POCs vary by manufacturer, and you really need to match that patient's current liter flow or prescription with their clinical needs and their device. Need to be titrated. Can't say that enough. We have to consider those clinical needs, and always, if you have a patient that is considering purchasing a unit, steer them clear of the internet right now. They really need to go to a professional like us. Okay? Any questions? I think I hit every slide. Any questions? Everybody's going to be out there looking at their Facebook feed that has POCs listed the whole way down the front, huh? Yes. Just a little question? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the best thing I could say
Kim,
to that...
could you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. She had asked, what do we do about the pediatric population? Because are they able to trigger these devices? And you know, the pediatric population have young families and they want to walk, they want to go places and they want to do things. The first thing I would say is whatever POC that they're using or you use within your company, make sure it is specified for pediatric population. Sometimes they'll state in there only for... Yeah, so we don't deal a lot with the pediatric population. I have seen, wait, where's, oh, he left. Tony, he does a lot with the pediatric population. He might be able to answer that. But I have seen where have you seen the Invacare brand? Okay, I have, yes, and I've seen them attach that to POCs. We don't recommend that because I don't know if it's off label or not, and we don't have a pediatric population. So I'm not sure, but I would check with the manufacturer before you do anything. Okay. Yes?
The weights you were giving on your slides, did that include the battery couple?
That's a single battery, yes. Most patients like the double battery because there's another thing I missed in my slides. They advertise that they weigh 5 pounds or 4.6 pounds. What they're not telling you is that's with one battery But then if you add another battery, you're adding sometimes 2 pounds to that unit, easy. So it's not as, even a 5-pound unit, I challenge all you to put that 5-pound unit on you and walk around with it, it's heavy. So now add another 2 pounds. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is, it really is. And they advertise that this will last 10 hours. Well, yes, it will last 10 hours if you add an extra battery to it. And then when you get the extended life battery, yep, good point, thank you. Any other questions? Going once?
Thank you, Kim.
All right, thank you guys.